Good morning. Appreciate you guys being here this morning. Certainly, with today being Veterans Day, I would like to just take a moment to honor those who have served in the United States Armed Forces. I think that's important. So many things going on here at Oregon, right? Tremendous game on Saturday night with the women's basketball team. Tremendous accomplishment there by the team and Coach Graves, and of course the men's basketball team getting off to a 2-0 start as well. So, and that being said, all in the course of a bye week where so much focus on improving, on becoming more and more sharp at the things we do, some scheme tweaks that we think could help us down the road, and then, of course, a tremendous amount of recruiting that took place locally and, of course, all over the country. So, with that being said, open to questions.
Questions right here on the left, Eric.
Arizona's been kind of switching between different quarterbacks this last couple of weeks. I think they've said recently that they're going to make an announcement at game time. You guys preparing for both, and what do they do differently? And I guess what's the preparation with that fact?
You know, they're both different, but they both are really good players. And we know last year, I mean, we didn't do a very good job against them. They did a great job against us, so we understand exactly the different threats that they pose to our defense. But they both can run with the ball. They both throw the ball extremely well. They both do a great job diagnosing defenses and, you know, going through their progressions. And they both run exactly what their head coach wants them to run. They know their offense really well. So you've got to prepare for both, knowing that they both are really good players.
Front left, James.
I know the expectation was for CJ, Cyrus, Dallas to all be back, but were they back on Sunday? Is everything full go with all of them?
They were. We feel good about it. They were full go yesterday. None of them were limited. And yesterday's practice was about an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes, which at this time of year, Sundays are usually used for walkthrough, but because of the bye week and a couple extra days off, we thought it was important to get on the field and move fast. And we did. And every single one of those guys was a full tilt. So feel good about it.
On the right, Ryan. Microphone right behind you.
After the game, you said you kind of knew since high school that Mikael Wright could do those kind of things on special teams, but he said his coach was kind of reluctant to put him back there, and that you guys gave him that chance. What was it that you saw about him that you think can make him a special player in that capacity?
It just showed up every single day. I mean, if you watch Mikael, there's a lot of things that stand out. One of the best things, one of the most things that pop are his instincts. I mean, naturally, when the ball's in the air, he knows how to get to it, right? He knows how to play receivers and how to handle guys that show late hands or guys that, you know, hold the line and fade away. And when he's had the ball in his hands in practice, during when he gets a pick or something of that nature, he just has a natural feel for following his blockers, setting up his blocks. And I go back to his high school film. I don't know who was reluctant to put him back there, but without question, he's not only an electrifying player back there. I think the more he does it, the better and better he will get. And, we don't want to extend him too much because he's got a lot going on with special teams and playing corner for us. But his role, on teams is going to continue to expand.
Right here, front left, James.
With the benefit of hindsight, Mario, looking back at last year's game and just how, not schematically, that really was what you guys were identity-wise, looking back at it, was that a bit of a turning point, even philosophically? Because this season, I know at times it wasn't always run first and stuff, but it was mainly early non-conference play with Nevada and Montana. But really in league play especially, you've really stuck to that identity since. Even in the loss to Utah last year, it was not because you weren't running the ball. Was that Arizona game something where both you and Marcus look back and can say, yeah, that you clearly have identified and rectified what went wrong that day?
Well, I think that game highlighted a lot of things. Number one, of course, run the football was an issue, and if you aren't able to run it and you're one-dimensional, you become that much more easy to defend. But just as much as that was the ability to defeat man coverage, because that's what they did, right? They mugged us, they pressed us, and we were ineffective at moving the football. And we had maybe a couple of chunk plays here and there, but certainly not nearly enough consistency. So the commitment to doing both those things, to run the football and beating man coverage, I mean, not only are important for this particular game, but down the stretch and in our conference, you've seen a lot of that so far. We're gonna see more of it. So those two things have been a priority since the fall camp.
On the right, Ryan.
Mario Brady Breeze is one of those older guys that, went through several coordinators and kind of slowly progressed and developed. And I remember you mentioning during one of the camps that he was getting his hands on a lot of balls and interceptions on a daily basis. What's allowed him to make those plays in big games now this year?
Well, he cares. I mean, he's always wanted to be in a situation where he could play in Autzen State and be part of this football team because it means so much to him, and so he invests time in it as well. And it seems that every week communication has become better because that was the biggest thing we had to get better at on the back end, right? We had to learn how to communicate better, know exactly where our help was in the run game, know exactly where our help was in the passing game as well. And Brady and all those guys have done a really good job just continuing to tighten up the rules and the communication aspect of that. And he plays with a lot of passion. He's a physical football player as well, and every single week he gets better and better. So really looking forward to watching him play this weekend.
Second row, Jerry, in the middle.
Yeah, Coach, after the USC game, you addressed the rash of penalties, but I'm sure that week going in, you knew that may be a problem, right? And probably that was addressed, yet they still did it. So now, you think that's just an anomaly, something just unique to that game? You think I know you've dealt with it, but as a player even, I'm sure you had a lot of passion, but how were you able as a player maybe to control yourself even though you had that passion? And why do you think it happened even though you probably warned them before the USC game?
Football happens sometimes, as a player. I mean, I had it both ways. I was able to learn sometimes, and sometimes I had to learn it by sitting on the bench beside my coach, and sometimes that's what it takes, Maybe that's the case for some guys as well, and hopefully we can learn from, the consequence was not shown on the scoreboard itself, but certainly on maybe what our output could have been, right? How we could have continued to progress in one of the areas which we take a lot of pride in, which is being very, towards the top of the conference in the country in terms of lack of penalties. So we got to find our way back there, and that's strictly commitment to discipline. That's what that is. So it has shown up in practice and expect to show up in the game.
On the left, Eric.
Might be kind of a silly question, but when you're really rolling 8 straight wins like that, maybe your best performance against USC, can a bye week almost disrupt some of that momentum? And kind of how do you fight against that if that is a case?
It's a good question. I don't think anyone ever knows. If anyone could bottle and sell the success after a bye week, you'd have multimillionaires all over the country now. It's one thing for sure during the bye week, you can get better, but like you just meant, you can get worse. And I think you prevent yourself from any type of decline if you really incorporate competitive drills. So the amount of good-on-good stuff we did, 2-minute drills we were doing, 5-on-4 pass rush, 2-on-2 pass rush, 1-on-1 perimeter blocking, 2-on-2, 1-on-1 receivers versus DBs. I think all that stuff keeps you sharp and keeps you on edge. And the other factor is where is your team physically? Are you beat up to the point where you need some extra time off? Where are you going to get better? Because as much as you're trying to alleviate some of the issues with the bodies, you also have to alleviate some of the issues with the mind. And we've had a lot of success around here after bye weeks. I haven't been around forever, I know that, but after bye weeks, we've done a really good job with the regimen, the structure that we have, and we're confident that what we did this past week was a real good investment in us improving as a football team.
Front left, James.
Not to give away what Andy plans to do schematically, Mario, but how?
Don't you love when questions are proceeded
No, I'm
like
just
that?
saying.
Not to give it away, but as you give it away.
No. But clearly, J.J. Taylor was very effective against you guys last year.
Mm-hmm.
How, in broad strokes, stylistically, defensively, are you very different than that unit that struggled to stop him last year?
Well, yeah, we're worlds different in our scheme. What we do with our front, what we do with our pressures, what we do on the back end, the way it's taught, the way it's schemed up is, it's a world different. So, but you know what, like you mentioned there, they have a great running game. And when they get going, they've moved the ball on everybody and have scored on just about everybody as well. And when they get hot, they're hard to stop. And but they get downhill in the running game now. And Taylor's a tough guy to tackle, and they've got some other guys there as well that are hard to bring down. So you can't allow them to get those chunk plays and allow them to get their tempo going, because when they have their tempo operating at a high level, they're really hard to stop.
On the right, Ryan.
Mario, other than holding on for those last 9 seconds, did you get everything you wanted out of that Auburn game? In other words, did it help you guys in Seattle or, on that final drive against Washington State, Los Angeles, having played that level of game early on where a lot of teams, play 3 wins?
I think you get something out of every game you play, good and bad, and you certainly apply it. You make sure it's, your Sundays have to be dedicated to really taking a deep dive into the previous game. You have to find out what you're doing well and what you're not doing so well, how you complement the good stuff, and how you fix or just eliminate the stuff that's not working out. Because if you don't, you're going to see it again, right? You're going to see it every single week until you get it right. I love the way Bobby Williams, he always tells our field goal team, if a wing doesn't do a good job on the edge, it's like, okay, now you're going to get rushed every single week by 3 guys. They're going to knock you on your butt until you hunker down, get your hands inside, and punch off. So do it from that particular game. I think that game and every game we've learned a ton about ourselves. We knew going into the season that we were going to get tested every single week and that there were going to be some real big tests on the road, and therefore the investment and the mindset and the processes that come with that, we really went full bore on those now, and we've got some really good results. But I think everyone in the building, I know everyone in the building will tell you that we still have yet to play our best football. And, this is a time of year where, you need to start playing your best football, middle of November, right? Focuses on being 1-0, focuses on making sure that all the noise, all the external stuff stays external and doesn't become part of the locker room.
Front middle, Warren.
Mario, kind of along that line, the committee is releasing their rankings every week. You guys are in a great position, I think, at number 6. Are you personally a football watcher? When you take time, did you watch LSU, Alabama? Did you
watch every game possible?
You do.
Yeah.
You do.
Well, I was out recruiting. I didn't get back till about 1 in the morning. Great high school game. I love high school football. Like, I love watching high school football. So I couldn't sleep. So got in here real early, did all the work on Arizona, mapped out the week, the scheduling, the structure for how we travel, all that stuff. That takes, I'm not going to bore you with all that stuff. But I wanted to be able to get back in time to just start watching game after game after game and have those 3-4 screens going, because what an opportunity to play a game without having to suffer consequences, right? To make decisions and play the game in your head. I think that's invaluable, and every single week we have all like critical situations tabbed so that we can play through those as well. Well, would we have made the same decision? Why or why not? Do we need to reassess and reanalyze it? Because, every single week there's a different spin, a different tweak to a situation that might seem commonplace, but, right, they become critical. So, no, I watched a ton of football and some great football out there being played. And I think it's great for our guys to watch that and learn from it. They see how a critical penalty could reverse your fortune, if you're not winning like we were last week by a large margin. They've watched the importance of, hey, big-time players have to make those big-time plays in big-time games. And they watched teams that were ranked a lot higher than their opponents get smacked right between the eyes. For whatever reason it may be. Maybe the other team was better. Maybe a team was overlooked. But invaluable lessons that really complement a lot of the lessons that we learned last year in our first year together.
Time for 2 more. Jerry, right there in the middle, second row.
Yeah, we're about a month away from signing date. This 8-game winning streak, I know you can only talk in general terms, but are you getting maybe some people noticing and interested that you didn't have before? I'm sure how much has this helped recruiting?
It does a bunch because, and again, we don't really talk much about accomplishments. We want to let that stuff speak for itself. We stay 1-0 focused and very grounded and very humble and hungry. But what's happening is the messages and the blueprint and the vision that we have preached to the guys that we're recruiting, all that stuff is being validated by the season and the way that we're progressing. So yeah, it has led to some really interesting, great, and when I say interesting, I mean great in a great way, situations coming down the stretch here in our recruiting process. So it was a great week out. The Oregon brand is out there, and it's out there strong, and it is very well received, and we'll have some interesting opportunities and decisions to make here down the stretch.
Last question, front left, James.
To follow up on the penalties, but to this game specifically, Mara, last year's game, Cooper obviously had the hit on Dylan, and I know Dylan's gone, but his remarks about Dylan trying to take him out of the game, wanting to take him out of the game, the hit on Herbert late that obviously affected him. Do you address with your players, because they're going to be taking on Tristan Cooper, they're going to be taking on some of these guys who had these hits in last year's game, about this game specifically, this opponent specifically?
Well, I think you do address it. You acknowledge anything that's out there, because whatever's out there, they're going to get their hands on. They're going to get their eyes on. Again, if we think that we can beat social media, we got no chance. Social media is going to win. They're always going to be at the forefront of their thoughts. I walk into the restaurant down the street. You tell me if there's 25 people sitting down, how many don't have their face in their phones? Everybody does, right? So to your question, sorry to get off on a tangent there, is yeah, you address it, and you also address the fact that, the emotion side, playing with emotion is great, but you need to play with passion for what we are as an organization, for what we are as a team and a brotherhood. And emotion is part of that too, but you can't let emotions play with you. That's a big, big thing, right? If you ever let that stuff get to you, eventually, number one, it's a shallow fuel source. It really is. And number two, it takes you off track of what you got to do. And look, we're playing a really good football team with a lot of good athletes that, quite frankly, they did a great job against us last year. Okay, they beat us over there, and we've got to do a lot better and improve a lot and have a great week of practice and be at our very best to have an opportunity on Saturday to play our best football.